Hello out there in Radio Land. This is Michael. This is the Street Preachers Corner podcast, the podcast where the earth is round.
Is it?
The Holocaust really happened, and Elvis Presley might be alive. Maybe we'll talk about that one of these days. While I'm here, this is part something of the church kid interviews. So I did Cameron.
I'm your third child. Which ones have you done?
Well, I did Cameron.
Okay.
And I did your mom because she's a church kid.
Yes.
And so you be part of this. This is my favorite daughter.
I'm his only daughter.
Yeah, so you keep pointing that out. You're assuming if I had a different daughter, I'd like her better. I mean, who knows?
Probably.
Yeah, well. So the basic premise behind these interviews, conducted under very primitive conditions, by the way. What you people don't understand out there in Radio Land is we sit here, we're sitting here in an undisclosed location, broadcasting to you from. What's so funny?
Nothing.
We're sitting here broadcasting you from an undisclosed location, and we were just trying to work through the technical side of things, because I don't actually have what you would call a microphone. You can't see me doing my air quotes, but microphone.
He has a tablet.
I have a thing set up, and it's all very secretive how we're doing this.
No,
it's
not.
It's all magic.
No,
There's like a tin can tied to a USB port, and I'm like yelling into it. Ah!
No.
Anyway. So the church kid interviews exist because I think church kids are the weirdest people in the world, and as a guy who got saved at an advanced age of life, way back in the latter half of the 20th century, I've been studying church kids. I've been raising church kids. They're the weirdest people in the world, and so I have my perspective on things, and I have my own theories, but I always want to get the opinion of church kids, and so since I have so many of them just hanging around, eating up all my groceries and breathing all my air, I figured I'd take advantage of that and interview them. And so here we are in part 3. Yeah. So take the questions back. Some people have opted to not see the questions beforehand. Cameron didn't want to see the questions beforehand. Your mom, she looked at them and then dismissed them. So you've seen them. Okay. So you know what's coming. So the first question.
I studied them very hard.
So the first question that's on here that's actually not on here because this is like version original, is, in your church kid opinion, what makes a good church?
Atmosphere.
What does that mean?
So, I'm not going to name names, but past churches have been extremely judgmental. They would bring things to you only if
we put the mental in judgmental.
Yeah.
And we put the fun in funeral.
What?
Go ahead, you were saying.
Okay.
You seem flummoxed by that. We don't get flummoxed here in the Street Preachers Corner podcast. We persevere and we babble on.
That's the name of this?
Yeah, the Street Preachers Corner, yeah. I'd call it something.
Okay.
Chucklehead without a microphone. That name was already taken.
Okay. What was I saying?
Escaped lunatic with a laptop. So what makes a good church was the original question.
That is the question. Shut up.
I don't think you should tell the guy interviewing you, just shut up. But go ahead.
Atmosphere, and there's in our newest church, it's less judging, and it's more like coming. People can't see my hands, but like
Yeah. Trust me, I do air quotes. I make faces. No one can see it, and that's you actually just while she's thinking about her next thought. She asked, "Was this an on-camera interview?" And I said no because then I'd have to be on camera, and nobody needs that kind of pain in their life. Good. What makes a good church? You said atmosphere. You said the current church that we're at is better in that area than some other places.
Yes.
Without naming names, right? And
I would name names, but I would get in trouble.
Yeah, that's not necessary. It doesn't help anybody.
Gimme.
My ink pen just fell apart in my hand, like it's like scattered around the room. Here's a piece of it. Technical difficulties. Yet we soldier on because that's what we do.
You're leaving all this in?
We fight until we drop, and then we're fully rested by the time we hit the floor. You're high speed, low drag, rock hard, watertight. Now you were saying.
That's it.
All right. So in your opinion, atmosphere is big and judgmentalness is bad. So how would you define judgmentalness?
I could name names.
No, there's no point in that because the people, look, we know people that did misbehavior in the past. And what I want them to do is I want them to be able to fix that and move past that and outlive their mistakes without it being recorded forever on the internet that they were chuckleheads. Okay? So unless the guy is just like, no, I'm a chucklehead, I'm happy being that way, and I've made a career out of being that way, then I might name his names. But even then, sometimes I don't want to give those guys any more attention than they already get for themselves. Okay, so out of all the churches this is question 1.5 or something. Out of all the churches you've attended, and not just the churches we've been members of, but churches we visit around. We used to roll around a lot more than we do now.
Yeah.
But out of all the churches you've attended, what was your favorite and why?
Well, the first, what was it, 3? I was kind of young. I didn't because we started going to this one when I was 14, right?
We've been there. No, where'd you learn how to count? We've been there for a year and a half. You're 16.
I just turned 16.
Yeah, homeschool math.
We started going there in 2021. I was born in 2006. It was the middle of 2021.
I don't have time for your black magic, sorcery, and mathematics. Anyway, so where we're at now, I've been there for, we left the place in July, and then it's been another July, and now, so yeah, about a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that would make you 14 when we got there?
Yes.
Okay. Sure, why not? Let's go with that. Let's say 14.
Because I just turned 16.
Like I said,
3 months ago.
We don't have time for your black magic sorcery. You act like math is a thing. Math is racist. Anyway.
Why are you like this?
So all the church you've attended, what was your favorite and why? And then you started doing math problems, and you never answered the question.
Victory.
Okay. Why?
It's just better. It's more open about everything.
Okay.
We're met with love instead of hatred for any situation that the pastor doesn't necessarily approve of. I'm doing air quotes around it.
You should also speak up. Say that again and say it loud for the people in the back. Or what are people say? What do youngsters say with your jalopies and your phonograph records?
I have an iPhone in my lap. Well,
back in my day, lots of things happened. It was the 90s. It's very blurry.
Okay. I said our church, it's things that happen that are not necessarily, air quotes, approved of is met with love instead of, you did this wrong, now you're gonna die or something.
I don't think anyone's ever said to you, you're gonna die.
Cameron has.
Okay, Cameron.
Well, that's unrelated.
Yeah, I'm talking about church leadership. No one's ever came to you and said, look, I don't want to give people a pass for misbehavior, but I also don't want to say that some of my brethren in Christ did things worse than what they actually did. This is. I want to be fair-minded. I want the same sort of fair treatment I'd want from them. But anyway, so that being what it is. So what is the best thing about being a church kid, growing up in church?
Snacks.
Wow. What a spiritual titan I have raised.
I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of church until we started coming to this one.
Yeah, I know. So you think the best thing about being a church kid is snacks? Because you can't get snacks any place else in the world. They're only available at church.
Yes.
Okay. What is the worst?
Oh, actually, choir. I like the choir.
But I'm not talking about not just specifically where we're at now. Just in general, what is the best thing about if someone grew up like me as a heathen?
Snacks.
Snacks, because we never had snacks when I was a kid. Well, that's true, we didn't, because I was born a poor black child.
You're gonna get canceled.
Yeah, I've said way worse things than what I just said on this thing already. Okay, so the best thing is snacks. What's the worst thing about being a church kid?
It's boring. Sometimes.
How is it boring? Why is it boring? How could you be bored by the Bible?
It just is sometimes. It's not all the time. It's just sometimes. Also, on Sundays when I have to get up at 8:45, I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, God forbid you should get up after the sun comes up. Okay, so what do you think most people don't understand about church kids, but they should?
We're not all insane. We're not in a cult. It's not. You don't have to censor yourself and treat us like toddlers.
speak for yourself. I happen to be in a cult.
Well, yeah, we know you are, but
So what do you mean? You don't have to censor yourself. We're not in a cult. You should treat. What does that mean?
people after finding out that I was raised in church usually like a switch flips in their brain, and they treat me as a poor innocent baby. I'm not a poor innocent baby.
Okay. And you think
no, someone said heck around me one time after finding out I was a Christian, and they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend the Bible." Heck.
So I routinely work around people that drop F-bombs and take God's name in vain all day long.
But you're not
and no one apologizes to me
You're
about
not
nothing.
a kid, though.
Yeah, okay, that's true. So you're saying like this is what lost people should understand. You dropped your magic juju box.
Yes.
So that's what you're saying. That's what lost people should understand about church kids, that they're not in a cult.
We're not infants.
You're not an infant. So you equate the ability to handle swear words with maturity?
Yes.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. There's a cat in here somewhere, yeah. So many cats, so few bullets. What? So
he doesn't like cats.
I don't like cats, no.
I don't really like cats either, but I like my cat.
Is there any sort of lessons you've learned from the success or failure of other church kids or church families?
Don't do drugs.
Who did you know that he did drugs?
I forgot his name. He was, I forgot his name, but there's a guy.
This mysterious, mythical guy who may or may not exist.
The girl that I used to sit with, that was, I'm not going to name names, but she was, like, older than me. She's, you're friends with her. She ran. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So you look at that as a failure. What did you learn from that failure?
Don't run away with men.
And you needed her to say that? You needed her to do that for you to know not to run away with men?
I don't know. I was like
to
10.
me, I just know that you're not supposed to run away with men.
I was like 10.
Okay. What about church?
Wait, specifically, don't run away with men in the military.
Yeah, that was advice your mom took. I was out of the military by the time she told me, she said, if you'd stayed in, we wouldn't have been a couple. I wouldn't have done it. So that's church kids that have crashed and burned, and you've looked at that and went, okay, let's not do that. Yeah. What about church families? You probably have not paid as much attention to that as I have. I've looked a lot at other people's families and tried to figure out what works and what doesn't. The conclusion I've come to is that nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody's just winging it.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Well, no, it's not that obvious because when the kids are little, let's just speak as the church kid parent for a second here. When the kids are little, you sort of think. Well, for me, I'll speak for me. I thought that I was doing everything wrong, and that everybody else knew I was doing everything wrong, and that everybody else was just looking down their nose at me. And there was a lot of that going on, especially with your two older brothers. There was a lot of...
My two older brothers are very complicated people, even when they were little.
Well, no, people were looking at what they perceived to be incorrect behavior on the part of my children, and looking down their nose at me because of it. And I was looking down my nose at myself, which is really hard. It makes you go cross-eyed. But I was tragically hard on myself, which led me to be tragically hard on the kids. That was probably one of my biggest mistakes that I ever made. But I looked at other church kids, I looked at other church families, and we knew a family that I'll talk about this because actually me and the legendary Darnell G. Robinson were talking about this the other day, and there was a family in the church. They had 6 or 7 youngins.
Oh God!
Too
many children.
I think 4 of them were at home or something. Anyway, so from the outside looking in, these guys were doing everything right. They had devotions. They were homeschoolers, and they did and they wore ties to church, and they did all this stuff. They checked all these boxes. But what I'd noticed, they had a couple of kids that were already out of the house, and every single one of those kids, when they got 16, 17 years old, just lost their cotton picking mind and got face tattoos and looked like they fell face first into a tackle box and all that fun stuff. And just not like one kid went out in the world, like all of them, like bam, 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 bam. And we watched it happen even when the kids they still had at home We watched 16, 17 years old, bam, bam, out the door. And I just thought about that thing, and I thought about it. Turns out that there was some bad stuff going on in the house.
I'm not surprised.
Which part doesn't surprise you?
All of it, actually. Because I've seen,
You got to talk to this thing.
yeah.
No, you gotta. It's like because you're facing that way, and I'm looking at the waveform, and you're like,
It's fine.
no, if they can't hear you, this is like they're like Michael's imagining things. He's having imaginary conversations with people that aren't there, and they're like, yes, so I am. Actually, I talk to the audience who isn't here all the time. I tell them be quiet. I tell them just focus for a minute.
Do we need to send you somewhere?
just answer the question. You were talking about something. My goodness, this is hard.
I have the attention span of a 2-year-old. You should know this.
But you said don't treat you like an infant because you're a church kid.
No, don't treat me like one, but I am one.
Okay.
Anyways,
okay, so we're talking about families that had this deep, dark secrets. And then you said, oh, yeah, that doesn't surprise me because I know all about things. So what are the things you all know all about?
I have just heard from multiple kids and heard stories from multiple kids where literal abuse is passed under the, like, disguise of Jesus. I don't know why I put air quotes.
Yeah, you keep doing that. No one can see you.
But even, like, younger kids have told me about things. Specifically, the topic of getting beat came up at a sleepover that I went to, you know, the one at the church. Mm-hmm. And the stories that I heard, that wasn't...
So you and I might disagree on some of the finer points of what is and is not abuse.
Me and him don't get along on that point, but it's, like, worse than stuff that we disagree on.
Right. So I was going somewhere with this. Yeah. So we used to go to a church where one of the deacons in the church straight up bragged about beating his kids with 2x4s and breaking the 2x4.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you know, I'm pretty hardcore about some things, but wasn't, and everybody would just kind of laugh like this is a funny thing, and it was
dismissed as, oh, my kid told me a lie about eating candy, make it so they can't walk.
Well, I don't want to misrepresent the one. There's one incident in particular. I remember him telling this story about he has a son and a daughter, and the son was picking on the daughter, and so he bent him over the couch and beat him with a 2x4 until the 2x4 broke.
Yeah,
and he's a deacon in the church. So yeah, that stuff does go on, and it's pretty gruesome stuff. But that also goes on in lost people. That's not a church thing. That's a person thing.
I think it's more prevalent in the church.
Nowadays, my parents.
Your parents don't count.
Okay. Because I know what it is to have your dad break your nose and break your ribs. I know about that.
But, like,
and there was no Jesus being mentioned at all.
Yeah.
He said, get up so I knock you down again.
But, like, I've seen, especially in some of the past churches that we've gone to, adults brag about beating their 2-year-old.
Well,
and
I don't know.
I don't think children under, like, 4 or 5 years old understand that to the point that people think they do.
What do they understand?
They become scared of their parents.
Okay.
And I saw that in one specific family.
Okay.
One of their kids used to tell me all the time. She would say something that, like, was so innocent, and then she'd be like, "Don't tell my dad, he'll beat me." Like, girl, you're 9. Why are you worried about this?
Let me just say, let's move on. What advice would you give to a kid like you that is listening to this, and God help them if they are? What advice would you give to this hypothetical child listening to this hypothetical podcast about just church life in general? Like how do you make it without eaten alive? How do you make it without being a casualty? How do you make it without being just one more sad story we tell?
Fly under the radar.
What does that mean?
If people talk to you, you talk to them back, but otherwise, don't go out of your way to make friends. People in church are mostly fake. Don't give me that look.
This is a tragic episode of the Street Preachers Corner podcast. I don't think they can hear you though. I'm looking at this waveform and you're like
I'm being very loud. See?
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was just the end of my sentence. So
All
it was
right.
like.
Okay, so your advice would be, don't fulfill the scriptures and be a blessing and a benefit. Shut down and hold on and hunker down and just ride it out to you're 18. And then when you're 18, what changes?
Oh.
Okay.
Because you have the choice to leave if you want to then.
Yeah, but why would you?
But you can.
You could leave now. You could say, I'm just not going back, and me and you could fight over and whatever. And
that wouldn't end very well.
Sure, but still,
I've tried. It didn't work out very well.
Because I beat you with a 2x4 until it broke.
No.
Anyway, so that's your advice, would be fly under the radar.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say...
Also, youth groups suck. Just saying.
Okay, last question. This is getting sadder and sadder by the minute, man. I just want to crawl underneath the bed and cry now. Because I've said that the best and worst nights of my life have been in church. So you have been around public. This is called the Street Preachers Corner podcast. It's not called the Daisy Pickers podcast or I could get away with calling it the Nose Pickers podcast, but that probably wouldn't fly too well either. But you've been around public ministry, especially street preaching, all your entire life, and actually before your life. So is there any one incident or experience that comes to mind?
Dogs. Other than that, getting beer poured on me. But other than that, dogs.
So people that don't know, I've mentioned the beer pouring story. Yeah, words are things. I've mentioned that. Yeah, I've mentioned that before on out there in Radioland, and so people sort of know at least the context of that. That was Savannah, and I think you were like 9 or something.
I was younger than that. Okay. I was 5 or 6.
I don't think we would let you wander off in the square. I don't think your mom would let you wander off in the square when you were 5 or 6.
No, I wasn't wandering off in the square. I was standing next to you. That's how they knew I was with you. I was standing a couple feet away from you.
You really think a person would have poured beer on you and I would have done anything about it if I'd seen it? The incident I'm talking about, I was told about later when you smelled like a brewery.
I don't remember.
You may not like me very much, but I'm gonna fight for you. All right, I ain't gonna let somebody. We're going to jail. I've been to jail before. It's okay. So that's what. So the beer pouring thing. It's and then you said dogs. What about dogs?
Well, recently that one that one of your partners brings.
Yeah, so we have a fellow that preaches with some. Actually, he might be there tonight where we're going. And he brings his German Shepherd with him, and his German Shepherd is not the friendliest animal ever.
She's terrifying. I work with police dogs, and that dog scares me.
Yeah. So Belle has taken it upon herself to work with this dog and try to get some things sorted out and make it to where that guy can bring her out there, and it's not such a what's the word I'm looking for, liability.
She tried to bite me. I've been put in a bite suit and bitten by police dogs on purpose, and that dog terrifies me.
Okay, so what sticks out in your mind is not the things that I would notice, I guess, but the things that you notice. That's why I asked you. Okay, any last words you want to say before we shut this thing down?
No.
Well, it has been interesting. It has been different. You know, I got to tell you, though, in our ministry, we deal with a lot of bitter church kids, and you coming across like what right now? You're coming across like the sort of person that I'd be talking to in about 3 years. You might want to look into that. Okay, so this is Street Preachers Corner Podcast. This is Michael. I'm signing off. I will see you on the other side.
What other side?
The other side of, I don't know. The other side of I don't know. It's just a thing we say. I had to say something.